Pick a subject and an approach to a subject that you and only you can do, and then choose a subject that will be of interest to a lot of people.
Your journey has taken you from studying French literature to becoming a global barbecue authority.
Every day is different. I wake up, I never know what the next phone call is going to bring.
How have you created some sort of mental fortitude that allowed you to live the life that you've lived, knowing that steady paycheck was something you just weren't going to get?
Well, I guess looking back on it, I was too to get a real job.
Sailing your boat, cycling, writing novels, mastering the grill. How important is this variety of interests to your conception of a rich life? Today on The Rich Life Recipe, we are thrilled to welcome a guest whose life is as flavorful as the barbecue he has reinvented. Stephen, now here's the thing.
Raichlen?
Thank you very much.
Stephen Raichlen?
Stephen Raichlen isn't just a grill master. He's a true Renaissance man, blending culture, craft, and culinary artistry into a life that is nothing short of extraordinary. A graduate of Reed College with a degree in French literature, Stephen's journey took an unexpected yet brilliant turn when he became what Esquire once called America's master griller. With the mind of a scholar and the soul of an artist, Stephen has traveled the globe, uncovering the world's most iconic barbecue traditions and sharing them through his 32 books, including international bestsellers like The Barbecue Bible. Along the way, he's won 5 James Beard Awards and changed the way we think about cooking over fire. But Stephen's life goes far beyond barbecue. When he's not teaching at his renowned barbecue university or hosting hit TV shows like Project Fire and Project Smoke, you'll find him sailing his aptly named boat, Barbacoa, cycling along the shores of Martha's Vineyard, or exploring the deep connections between food, history, and culture. From lecturing at Harvard and the Library of Congress to delving into medieval European cooking, Stephen has shown us what a truly rich life is and how it shouldn't follow one single recipe. It's about blending passion, curiosity, and creativity to craft something truly unforgettable. Today, we'll uncover Stephen's personal recipe for a rich life, how he's combined intellectual curiosity, cultural exploration, and a love for bringing people together around the fire to create a life that truly sizzles with purpose and meaning. Welcome to The Rich Life Recipe.
Wow. Thank you very much. What an introduction.
You're deserving. Honestly, I spent, I don't know how many hours going through your channels and your books and your YouTube clips and I was just like, I've got to write something worthy here, because if I just freestyle an intro, it's just not going to set you up for all the great things you've added to this world. Which reminds me, I have to set up for my co-host with the mostess, the hostess, Alicia Shuro.
Thank you, Jason. And I am super excited to have Stephen here because he and I have worked together doing some amazing events for my clients that were just off the charts fantastic. I mean, this guy can grill. I'm talking 3 grills at simultaneously cooking massive different amounts of food. It's unbelievable. Super excited to have you here today.
Thank you.
And I've got to say, I've got a couple of questions. I know Alicia's going to jump in with questions far greater than mine. But when I started, I had so many questions, and then I sort of whittled it down and whittled it down and whittled it down to what I think is what everyone's wondering, right? And I have to start with this. Your journey has taken you from studying French literature at Reed College to becoming a global barbecue authority. How has this unconventional path shaped your definition of a rich life?
So that's a funny question. And I think when I graduated from Reed with my degree in French literature, I never in a million zillion years would have predicted a career in barbecue. But when I look back on it, it all kind of makes sense. I wrote my thesis on a medieval French poet named Christine de Pizan. I applied for and won a Watson Foundation Fellowship to study, of all things, medieval cooking in Europe. that led me to the intersection of food and history and culture, which in a sense I've been doing ever since. I had a mentor in Paris at the La Varenne Cooking School, where I learned to cook after French literature, who said to me, "You know, Stephen, you'll never earn a living writing cookbooks." The gauntlet was thrown down. So, of course, I decided I would earn a living writing cookbooks. Uh, the first five, uh, the sales of the first five did not meet my expectations, nor did they add much to my bank account. But the sixth one came out, knocked it out of the park, and I've been writing books ever since. In terms of the rich life, I think there are a couple of things. First of all, every day is different. I wake up, I never know what the next phone call is going to bring. I mean, last year, this time, one phone call brought me to a barbecue festival in Abu Dhabi. Another brought me to a consulting project in Zurich, Switzerland. My travels on the world's barbecue trail to research my books and TV shows have taken me to 75 countries on 6 continents. Uh, the beauty of barbecue, it's you don't do it alone. You always do it with people. It's a very social activity. So while writing is pretty solitary, the act of cooking and eating barbecue are very social. So it's a nice kind of solitary social combination. Um, I have never, in a sense, had a real job. I've never worked at an office. I've never had a steady paycheck. Like to say I've never had a boss, but I am married, so uh, I've had great partnerships, interesting people, and every day is interesting. I think curiosity is what makes a rich life.
I love that. So that's our first ingredient for those paying
Yeah.
attention,
Love that
curiosity.
also.
And I think something else that you said, which I thought was really interesting, is you never had a steady paycheck. There's so many
Mm.
people out there right now who thought they chose a certain job or career because it provided a steady paycheck and have avoided the arts and creativity and writing books and chasing passions and curiosities because of the fact that it didn't. How have you created some sort of mental fortitude that allowed you to live the life that you've lived, knowing that a steady paycheck was something you just weren't going to get?
Well, I guess looking back on it, I was too stupid to get a real job. I remember early after my Watson year and my 2 years in Paris learning how to cook and working as a translator at La Varenne, I moved back to the States, to Boston, and I decided to become a freelance food writer. And I think my first assignments paid maybe $35, $25. I remember my first 2 years as a freelance food writer, I think I made $4,000 a year. Interestingly, that's the last time in my life that I ever had everything I wanted, probably because I didn't know better. Uh, but, you have to be very motivated. You have to be able to live with uncertainty. I would say that probably I work harder than my on-staff journalist and writing partners, because when you are freelance, you never turn down work and you're always working and always thinking about the next project.
Oh,
Mm.
true.
But in fact, I mean, I try, this is advice I try and give my kids and the other younger members of my family, like, don't work for somebody else. Be your own boss. It may seem a little uncertain and insecure in the short run, but in the long run, working for somebody else, there's no job security anywhere, especially now.
Absolutely. I have a mantra to which I live by, which is never be a boss, never have a boss.
Okay, good.
And
Good.
it's worked for me. Over
Mm,
30 years of my career now, I look
mm,
back and I think, okay, I always say to people, it's safer to live my way than yours. And they say, but I have a boss. And I go, exactly. You upset one person. You, forgive my French, piss off your boss one time and you're
mm,
gone. I have to upset so many people to lose my paycheck. I've got to
mm,
upset 12 different clients, a consulting client, a book publisher, a person getting me on a podcast. So many things have to go wrong for my
mm,
paychecks to stop coming. It's far
mm.
safer to live my way of life than yours.
Right. Now, we should say that, and I mean, for people listening to that, that does not mean you should go out and quit your job right away. You know, you do have to have a plan. You do have to have an idea. You have to have, 6 months to a year of savings. Although, gosh, since we're remembering now, boy, at one point I was down to $36 in my bank account. And I remember it
Wow.
very clearly. I just come back from France, so it was right before the holidays. And the French have a dessert called bûche de Noël. Way before I did barbecue, I did, my French cuisine was kind of my first cuisine that I really did a deep dive into. And I made bûche de Noël to sell to people, and
Mm.
that got me through the holidays.
Wow.
Made a couple $100. Thankfully, it's been all uphill since then.
Uphill or downhill?
Or downhill.
Come on,
It's gone up since then.
Okay, fantastic. Well, one of the things I have to ask that sounds like it was an uphill struggle is the fact that you've translated barbecue traditions across 17 languages and numerous cultures. How has experiencing food through these different cultural lenses influenced your understanding of what makes life fulfilling?
Well, you know, Julia Child once gave me some very good advice, and she said, take a subject and an approach to a subject that you and only you can do, and then choose a subject that will be of interest to a lot of people.
Mm.
And looking back on it, barbecue fit that advice perfectly. Everybody in the world loves barbecue, and they may love it differently. In Turkey, then they would love shish kebab, and in Indonesia, they would love satay, and in Argentina, they would love asado. But everybody feels a passion about barbecue. In terms of the unique approach, I guess it's the intellectual approach, um, viewing barbecue within the framework of history and culture. And I very early on from my first book, I made world barbecue my beat. I mean, that's my specialty. There are guys that can do brisket much better than I can. There are guys that run restaurants, better than I can. There are gals who are better than me on TV. But I don't think anybody has been to as many countries and studied barbecue as broadly and as globally as I had. So that was the approach I was willing to take. Anytime I start a new book, I pack a suitcase. It involves travel. It involves meeting people. I love field research. So, thank you, Julia Child, for that advice. I'm not sure I followed it deliberately, but it wound up being very good advice.
It's amazing.
I love that. And what a name drop. I'm sorry, but that
I
is one of the top name drops ever.
Well,
I'd like to get to some of those. I'd like to hear more about that.
it's funny. Julie and I met Julie in Paris at the Lover and Cooking School, and then it turned out we lived about 10 blocks away from one another in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Of course, Julia lived on the right side of the tracks. I lived on the wrong side of the tracks, but she was a real sport, and I ate at her house many times. When you write cookbooks, you test recipes. You have to have people around to eat both your successes and your failures. I remember once she served a squash soup in a big old Hubbard squash. And as she brought it to the table, one side collapsed. But she wasn't afraid of that. Like that was Julia. And I actually did once invite her to my apartment for a caviar tasting. I was food and spirits editor for Boston Magazine, and we did a story on caviar. And I'm invited, and here this woman gamely tromped up 3 flights of stairs to my apartment on the wrong side of the tracks, and we tasted caviar together.
Amazing.
She's a fantastic lady.
That's incredible.
Yeah, what a story.
I will not name drop anymore.
No,
No,
please,
love
please.
it.
We love it.
Love
We absolutely love it.
Well, then there was the time that one morning I got a call. Do you know you're on Howard Stern? Now, I'd never listened to Howard Stern before, but he apparently had bought a copy of my book, How to Grill, and at the time was an ardent grilling enthusiast. And he started talking up the book, and we tuned into Amazon and we watched my book, How to Grill, go from I don't know, number 5,000 to number 6 on the Amazon bestseller list. That wasn't just a cookbook. That was all books together. Oprah's latest book, by the way, is number 7. So long story short, I got in touch with Howard to thank him, offered to teach a class for him, and wound up teaching a private class for Howard Stern at his home in the Hampton. Now, when I told my kid that I was going to Howard Stern's, like, no way, you're not going without us. So it was very awkward, but I had to call him back and say, this is really embarrassing, but could I bring my kids? He couldn't have
That's
been more
awesome.
gracious.
Oh, that's lovely to hear.
Yeah, that's a great one. Love that. I had a question for you. So, I mean, I've known you a while now, and I think what makes you another dynamic part of your personality is that you're both an introvert and an extrovert. As you were explaining, you can go off into solitary and write a cookbook, but yet you're entertaining the masses, teaching everyone how to cook barbecue, which is just impressive because most people do not have that dynamic version of themselves. So for you, what are some of your impactful habits or routines that you've developed over the years to keep both of those working simultaneously?
What an interesting question. Well, nobody's ever put it quite that way, but I guess I am an extroverted introvert. I think I'm probably more introverted than extroverted, but put me on a stage or in front of a group of people, and I just come alive. A routine. I'm fairly compulsive and regimented. I start every morning up either with an exercise routine or a walk. Simultaneously, I'm listening to Spanish or Italian tapes to try and learn those, or listening to books in French to try and keep my French up. I get up very early, which I think is part of my success. Ben Franklin said, "Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise." I don't know how wise I am, but I try and write in the early, try and spend the first half of the day writing. And it's funny because I do TV, I do public speaking, I have products, but if I haven't written something, I don't feel like I've earned an honest day's living. In fact, today I have not written anything. I've spent the day kind of catching up on emails and stuff like that. And so, you know, struck right. I didn't really didn't really earn my living today, but I did work over the weekend. And then come 1 o'clock, if it's a nice day, I try and go sailing, because there's got to be a payoff for getting up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Then I
Wow.
come back and, I might work in the evening. Off, almost always work 6 days a week. That kind of comes back to another part of what we were talking about earlier about going freelance, being your own boss. And I bet this is true for you too. I think you probably work more, when you're on your own, um, than you might if you had a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Definitely.
Jason and I are always working.
Did I answer your question, by the way? My wife
You
said
did.
I did her answer. And
Yes.
No,
that's
you
people's
did a
question.
great job.
Yeah.
You did a great job. You
Maybe it's
mentioned
just
your,
her questions.
no, you did a fantastic job. You mentioned your boat, so I have to ask, between
Yeah.
sailing your boat, cycling, writing novels, mastering the grill, you seem to cultivate diverse passions. Not to mention, you just mentioned learning,
Yeah.
Spanish and Italian. So muchas gracias for your time here, and
Uh-huh.
grazie. How important is this variety of interests to your conception of a rich life?
Well, it works for me. And I have to be stimulated all the time. That's just who I am. And I suspect if I were to do a deep psychoanalytic dive into my psyche, I had a pretty tough childhood. And I think part of my activity, constant activity, is probably to escape the past, or not think about the past, but think about constantly keep my mind active. Um, I think Freud called it sublimation, where you take a sort of a negative part of your personality or a handicap in your personality, and you find a way to turn it into something positive.
Mm,
Well said.
that- yeah. Love that.
For the listeners out there that are wondering, what's a great example of sublimation? I remember I had this exact conversation during counseling about 4 or 5 years ago, and my counselor said, think about it like dry ice, right? At normal atmospheric pressure, dry ice turns directly into carbon dioxide gas without ever becoming liquid. And you can observe this as the fog that forms around dry ice, that white stuff that's everywhere. Through the fog itself is actually water vapor from the air being cooled by the cold CO2 gas.
Mhm.
And sublimation would be sometimes when you see iodine crystals turning purple when heated, or mothballs slowly converting to vapor when they're heated, or freeze dried foods. You see the water sort of slowly come away as they're heated, or frost on a cold morning slowly becoming something that enters the air. This is a great way to think of sublimation. And I always remember that storyline.
That is a beautiful and powerful image. In my case, because of certain circumstances growing up, I always felt like a little inadequate and like I have to do more than everybody else to catch up. So that's actually been very useful in book writing. All right. So it's,
Sure.
I've written books that are 700 pages long. I've, written over 30 of them. So do more to make up for past shortcomings. It's okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
Your work bridges cultural traditions, right? From Texas barbecue to Vietnamese pho.
Mhm.
What has exploring these connections taught you about what humans universally value in a meaningful life?
What a great question. Well, one thing we value is food, and we value delicious tasting food.
Mm.
And I think that sets us apart from all the other animals in the world. We cook, we're the only animal that cooks. Our love of cooking, we began cooking about 1.8 million years ago with a distant human ancestor called Homo erectus. And the discovery that you could cook meat with fire was the original barbecue, is the original brain food. Our brains quadrupled in size. We developed the gift of language. We cooked communally. We ate communally. I mean, really everything that makes us human originated with that first act of barbecue.
Wow.
But I'm fascinated by how every culture sort of invents a cuisine that is delicious and satisfying for them. And obviously, that cuisine is governed in a sense by what ingredients are available,
Mm.
what the weather is like. In Asia, grills are small because there's a lot of manpower, but not a lot of natural resources. In the United States, our barbecue is big, right? We cook a brisket for 14 hours because historically we had vast forests, didn't have a lot of people, a lot of hands to cut meat into tiny little chunks to make satays. And in Argentina, there's a real gaucho culture. There's a beef culture. Argentina was once the richest country in the Americas, and Buenos Aires was the richest city in the Americas, and it was because of this beef trade. You think about it, like somebody invented a refrigerated ship. Okay, all of a sudden, all this beef in Argentina could be exported to Europe, could be exported to North America, to Australia. I'm just fascinated by how barbecue brings it all together for me, and it's delicious to eat, but there's always such fascinating stories behind it and unexpected stories behind it. The Weber kettle grill. I mean, that began as a nautical buoy, and the guy that invented it, George Stevens, worked for the nautical buoy company. So he thought nautical buoys like it's a metal bowl, right? Two of them, you solder them together, you weld them together. He took the bottom half of one, cut vent holes in the bottom, put legs on it, put a grill grate in it, and came up with the Weber kettle grill. And because the metalworks company he worked for was the Weber Metalworks company, that's how Weber came to be. And at every turn, there was an absolutely fascinating story. I mean, I guess most meaningful to me about barbecue is it's just so central to so many cultures.
Mm.
Mhm.
And I guarantee you could take a satay master from Thailand next to a kebab wala from India, next to a churrascaria guy from Brazil, next to a Texas pitmaster. You could put them together. They wouldn't share the same language, but I guarantee you in 20 minutes, they'd be communicating.
That's
Wow.
amazing. That's beautiful.
Barbecue's the new universal love language.
Mm.
That's
I
good.
love it.
That's a
Speaking
Fox
of,
Pop, Sophia.
Turkey.
well, they just gave me my lead for
Is that your next book?
Valentine's Day blog.
Great.
There was a couple a few years ago that when they went out on their first date, the guy, interestingly, brought the girl a copy of my barbecue Bible. And then when they were married, they swore their vows over the barbecue Bible. So cool. That really is. Barbecue's the original love language. Yeah, I like that.
I love
You
that.
can use it. It's all yours.
Thank you. I'll give you credit for it. I always give credit. When somebody gives me a good idea, I always give credit.
I always say the exact same thing. Having taught at venues from Harvard to the Library of Congress, what life lessons about fulfillment have you gathered from sharing your knowledge with others?
Well, I guess, one of my core beliefs is you should try and make the world a better place. And someone like Jose Andres, the legendary Spanish chef, has made the world an infinitely better place by feeding hungry people and people in disaster. My contribution is much, much smaller, but I like to think I've helped in helping people to grill better. I've made their lives richer and maybe their families richer and taught them a skill that they can teach their children and so on. But if you're going to weigh the balance, Jose's up here, Stephen Reichlen's down here, but everybody tries to do that.
I wouldn't say that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's a scale. I think it's a record player, not a straight line.
Okay.
And sometimes you don't know how you're helping people. They could have read your book and you're not getting the stories. So
Right.
you're not getting the full impact of your participation. So
Well, the other thing is that I find, and one of the reasons television has been so difficult for me, when I'm in front of a live audience, right, you get all that energy from the audience back at you, and it gives you the energy to do what you do. When I first started in television, I was staring into a lens, and I could never make this. Really talented TV people look at that lens and they see people. I look at that lens and I see a lens. I approach television from a writer's point of view, and as a writer, you're always editing. I always think in sentences and paragraphs, and on TV, you just talk. So that was a very hard lesson to learn. But the feedback. I mean, when you give and people like what you're giving, it makes you want to give more.
right, it's the energy, right? That energy, you definitely feel it. So you've lived such an extraordinary life with all the travels and just, the cooking for different exotic people. What's been one of your favorite stories? Besides the Julia Childs ones, which are obviously at the top here. But has there ever been in any other situation that you found yourself in that was unique or extraordinary or something that comes to mind when you think back?
Oh, so many. But I guess one would be the time that I battled the Iron Chef in Tokyo and actually won. And you got to understand that I am not a chef. I'm reasonably handy around the grill, but this guy could cook circles around me for 1,000 years. It all started with a phone call, like so many things do. A Japanese TV station wanted to do a special on American barbecue, and they proposed coming to Martha's Vineyard to film a typical American July 4th barbecue. So, why not? I mean, that's what we do. So they came and they brought with them a singing chef, a famous Japanese television chef whose claim to fame was that he sang his recipes. And he brought with him a bag of mystery ingredients that I was to cook. And these are weird things like sea urchin ovaries and gobo, burdock root. And anyway, I did okay with that experience. And then when they left, they invited me to come to Tokyo to battle the Iron Chef. Now, the guy I battled was a guy named Rokusburo Ichiba, was the original Iron Chef, the meanest, scariest Iron Chef ever. Looked like he ate Jewish kids, little Jewish guys for breakfast. But there I was, and on Japanese television, and everything that went wrong could go wrong. I mean, on my station, I had an American flag; it kept falling off. I asked for a grill. I got basically an oversized Bunsen burner. He did this giant thing. They told me I couldn't cook with charcoal. Well, I found out why, because he had all the charcoal and he had the charcoal grill and everything. But through this amazing set of circumstances, and then I'm on TV, right? And what do you do on American television? You talk, right? So I'm talking, explaining what I'm doing. And the host very angrily says, "Why is the American chattering so much?" And then one of the dishes I did was I did ribs, baby back ribs. And I called the co-host, which is timid little woman. I called her down next to the grill and I said, "Now turn around back to the audience and to show everybody where a baby back rib comes from." I held the rib up to her back. Normally in America, the crowd goes crazy. The TV hosts love it and everything. Well, this woman looked like a deer in headlights and I had violated every rule of etiquette and decorum possible. So I was not doing very well, but midway through the show, the host came down and cut off a rib, gave it to him. He ate it with his fingers, which the Japanese don't do. And this like light bulb went off. And he said, Michiba is doing this fancy dish with lobster and abalone and $100 a piece mushrooms. And the American is cooking with cheap ribs. I made coleslaw with cabbage. And 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 he tasted it and he liked it. And then all of a sudden everybody got really interested in what I was preparing. And at the end of the evening, the way the votes were tallied were the two lucite tubes, and the audience got to put a ping pong ball in either Michiba's tube or my tube. And I must say that balls in my tube were towered over Michiba's. He only said one word of English to me the whole evening. It was rematch. And I immediately hung up my tongs because I knew that that was never going to happen.
That's incredible. That is
What
a
a great story. I love it.
beautiful story. You mentioned Martha's Vineyard. Living between Miami and Martha's Vineyard, how does your connection to these different places contribute to your sense of a well-lived life?
Well, first of all, simply speaking about barbecue, I'm in constant barbecue weather. I did live in Boston before I moved to Miami, and 6 months a year, it's pretty cold. I did grill there, but I moved to Miami to marry my wife, who had a job that she had to be here for, and I can live anywhere and plug in a computer. It's been a great, great move for me. Discovered uh, a whole new cornucopia of foods and cuisines. I'm a water guy, so being a 10-minute bike ride from my boat in the marina is fantastic. It's a real melting pot of cultures here in Miami. I mean, our official city language is Spanish, not English. I mean, not official, but 80% of our citizens are Spanish speaking. Uh, and the Martha's Vineyard, well, when I married Barbara, kind of part of our contract was we had to get back to New England somehow. So I had cooked for a psychodrama retreat group on Martha's Vineyard many, many years ago when I first came back from Paris, and I was trying to earn money any way I could. And we fell in love with Chappaquiddick Island. Now, you guys are probably too young to remember what happened on Chappaquiddick. No. So there was a terrible accident with Ted Kennedy and a young woman in his car, and a car that went over the bridge, and a young woman drowned. Anyway, that's where we chose to buy land and build our house. We spend 6 months a year there. And if part of my year is very, out there on the road, Martha's Vineyard, we're at the end of a 1.5-mile dirt road in the middle of the woods. So it's a very secluded place. But Martha's Vineyard has its own incredible foodways, its rhythms of food. I mean, just impeccable seafood. I mean, fantastic farm produce. We buy almost everything from farmers markets when we're in Martha's Vineyard. It's a great place to write. And there too, 10-minute ride and we can be on the water. So it's really been perfect combination for us.
You mentioned something there that I want to push in on, the sort of talking about the woods and then the water, the building your own house. As someone who has successfully blended academic interests, French literature, medieval cooking, with hands-on craftsmanship, in this case, grilling. How do you view the relationship between intellectual and practical pursuits in creating a satisfying life?
Mm. I mean, for me, it's very important. In one sense, it's held me back. I think my wife would have preferred for me to have been an academic, a professor of literature, and kind of not get my hands dirty and drip barbecue sauce on my shirt. But for me, it's been great. I think if I'm not a chef, I would never want to cook full time. I worked at a restaurant one summer in Brittany, and that taught me I wanted to write about food and not cook it on a full time basis for a living. But it's a really good balance. I think people who get to use their hands. It's funny. I notice a lot of our students at Barbecue University are doctors. I mean, I'd say that's the profession that is the most highly represented. I think there too, there's something about using the mind, all this incredible information you have to master, using your hands to actually touch and heal people. And that's kind of the same with the approach I try to take to food.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, interesting. Would never known they were mostly doctors. Very interesting.
That or
Well,
it's a
now
very expensive university.
well, now I was going to say now it's divided between doctors and IT people. It's a matter of lawyers too.
Wow. We're about to wrap up the show. We'd have to ask, if you were writing a Rich Life recipe as your next book that you would be handing off to the next generation of people to follow in your footsteps, what would that recipe look like?
Well, I would say take equal parts passion, curiosity, creativity, and persistence and hard work. Like those are the ingredients, and put them all together, and cook them yourself. Do not cook them in an office building or for a company. I mean, unless that's
That's the true
temperamentally
thing.
where you're the most comfortable. Never do it the same way twice. That one of the biggest challenges for me as a food writer is I never cook a recipe the same way twice. That's why I develop my recipes, but then I have independent people test it. Because I'm always want to do something different, something new. So I guess that would be my recipe for a rich life.
I love that. And I have to ask, do you have a pet? Do you have a little dog, cat, any animals?
Do not. My wife is highly allergic, so no pet. However, living in Miami, we do have a lot of little baby lizards. Cuddle.
Nice.
That's gorgeous. Alicia, final thoughts, final question as we close up shop.
I'm just in awe of this whole conversation. It's been great having you here. And I love the one thing you said is you never do the same thing twice. That's so interesting to me because I feel like I have a little bit of that. I don't ever like walking in the same direction twice. If I'm going to the same place, I always go a different way. I don't like
Interesting.
eating the same thing every day. I have to
Yep.
eat something different. I don't like leftovers.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's a personality or if it's deeper than that. But I love that. I love that, you're conscious of doing that on purpose.
It's interesting as well because we just had a podcast with Harry, this incredible magician comedian, Harry Greenbaum.
Harrison. But yes.
Harrison, apologies.
Yep.
And I was saying, I never do the same speech twice. I do it once. I will only do it once. You pay me for that moment, for that talk, and then never again. And he was saying, I was missing out because I don't get a chance to work on my craft. I don't get to do the talk so
Refine
many
it.
times. Yeah. So I'm excited that you said, you're
Yeah.
good with Alicia and I who are like, no, one time, one magic moment.
Well, I mean that. Listen. That being said, I mean I have a history of barbecue lecture I've done, and I've probably done it 100 times, starting at Harvard and the Library of Congress. But every time I do customize it. But I'm the kind of person like Alicia. I always want to eat something different. It's funny because my wife knows what she likes. She wants to eat it. She'll order the same dish at the restaurant. She's lived enough to know what she likes, and that's what she wants. And for me, I'd rather risk a bad meal to have something I've never tasted before, for the experience of having something different.
Yep. It's amazing. I mean, everybody's different, right? That's what makes the world a beautiful place.
Well,
Those
guys,
are the
I have to
ingredients.
tell you, uh, this is this has been one of the most fascinating interviews I've ever done. Your questions just really get right to the core, make me think, which is good. And you're a very lively conversation. So thank you so much for including me.
Thank you so, so much for, sharing your incredible knowledge, your passion for the art of barbecue, but also the art of life. And I know I speak for our listeners when they listen to this, when they're just going to say, keep on grilling, keep on explaining, keep on cooking, keep on reminding us why our history, our present, and probably our future is around community, fire, and conversations.
And
Thank you.
barbecue is the universal love language.
Amen.
Just
Love it.
go pick up one of Steven's books. Any one of them is a gem. I know because I have a few.
Thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this, definitely give us 5 stars on wherever you find good audio content. I'm hoping it's Apple because we're big believers in Apple. We're not sponsored yet by Apple, but apples also go well with pork. And if you just type the word in barbecue in the comments, it'll mean a lot because we'll know that this episode sizzled the way it should. And thank you again for listening to The Rich Life Recipe with me, Jason Allen Scott, my co-host, Alicia Shearer, and of course, our incredible guest.
Thank you.